titled Better Building Blocks, Equipping Public Servants to Succeed. We've talked a lot about digital transformation, but this session we're going to be asking, do you, civil servants, public servants, people working in the public sector, have the blocks that you need, the building blocks that you need, whether that's skills, systems, tools, funding, budgets? What do you need to really enable digital transformation to happen successfully? So in terms of our brilliant panel here, today we have Megan Collins, who is Chief Enterprise Information Management at the Corporate Services, for the Corporate Services sector at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. We've got Dorothy Eng, who is Chief Executive Officer at Code for Canada. We've got Innocent Muhizi, who is Chief Executive Officer at the Rwanda Information Society Authority. Great to have you with us here from Rwanda. We have Tara Holland, who is the Government Data and Analytics Industry Principal for SAS. We've got Cordell Shakhtar, who is Chief Information Officer at the Department of Transport in the United States. And all the way over from Estonia, we've got Carl Sprenk, who is Director of Digital Skills Coordination at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communication. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. The very quick question I think I'm going to put to you to kick off, Megan, is what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be for public servants, and how well equipped do you think they are to meet those challenges?
Sure, we'll start off with the easy one. I think there's going to be quite a few challenges. I think we're all aware of we're going to have some fiscal constraints coming up, and our ability to be able to meet some of the technological challenges coming up is going to be difficult. Having said that, I think we've always faced those challenges to a certain degree, so I think what makes us more prepared is our ability to collaborate. That's been a huge piece today of us talking about that. But for me, what it looks like is really being able to be honest with colleagues, having a lot more open conversations. There's so many things that us as different departments are all trying to do, very, very communal kind of targets we're trying to get to. An example is we are looking at M365. My team has really been managing a huge shift from information systems into SharePoint Online. And we have been doing a huge effort to be able to engage with the different community. I would say probably 5% of my time is having meetings with other government departments to kind of tell them, here's what went wrong, let's be honest, here's what went right. If there's anything that you can learn from it, please take it. Just a citizen of this country, I really hope that we can have those conversations because I want everyone to be as successful as possible. And I think that really does come from our ability to collaborate. So looking at sort of those, we're all going to be feeling sort of the same constraints, the same challenges, our ability to have the right people there, making sure our people are as prepared as possible. We talk about change management all the time for our user base, but what about our own people? Are we giving them what they need to feel that they actually have a place to succeed? You know, 20 years ago, I have people on my team who are like, I came in to go work in a records room. Where do I fit today? That expertise is extremely important and still has a role to play today. So being able to make that translation for them of where they fit into tomorrow is extremely important and a huge aspect, I think, of what we need to do as
Brilliant.
leaders.
Thanks so much, Megan. So understanding where people fit and how those careers have changed over time as well, and where you might be going in the future. But also picking up, I think, on the session we just had, and it came up in other sessions as well, the importance of not just collaborating work-wise, but also stopping to listen to each other and learn lessons from each other about what's working well and maybe what hasn't worked so well, and not repeating some of those mistakes. Sounds very simple, but really important in terms of equipping us all for the future. Thanks so much. Dorothy, over to you. And just my question to you, I guess, is some people in the audience might be thinking, well, I don't even know what I need. So how do you kind of start to identify what you need to succeed?
Yeah, thanks. So we, at Code for Canada, we are a national nonprofit, mission-driven. We build the digital capacity of governments across Canada so that they're able to deliver and sustain user-centric digital services that meet the public where they're at. We are not government, so we're often talking to a lot of governments, kind of supporting from the sidelines and trying to coach them and build their confidence in like digital skills and collaboration and, you know, doing things in an agile way, but recognize that we're not actually within the confines of government when we work with those teams. But one thing that maybe just building on what Megan said, like what we have seen with certain jurisdictions across Canada is, and building on kind of like how supporting public servants where they're at, is we're noticing a narrative where folks are really just starting to rethink about how they think of risk in government and the risk of legacy technology and how to move forward from that. You know, there's a lot of kind of conversations that start with, oh no, we have this legacy system that is, you know, providing a critical service to millions of residents, and what's going to happen in, you know, if there's a security threat or a privacy threat or whatever. Often, you know, kind of the traditional path from there is a team might say, well, what, you know, how do we renew this contract with the existing vendor that's supporting this legacy system, or which vendor can come in to help us to like continue to build the scaffolding around this legacy system. And those are good conversations to have, but they're not kind of like looking at the full picture. When we think of things like, you know, what are the risks that an organization needs to think about? They need to think about, well, how is the service actually benefiting users? Is it delivering the value that it's intended to deliver or not? Have we spoken to users to kind of validate, you know, whether that is the case? You know, also incorporating, looking at people within the organization. Are they well equipped to, you know, support the service as it is right now? Or if we were to just like say we're going to renew our contract with this legacy technology vendor, can they support that going forward? And so these are also good conversations to have, just kind of like thinking of risk, not just from the perspective of, you know, is our solution secure? Is it compliant with, you know, legislation or with policy? But also just, is it actually being adopted and used by the users that are intended to use it? So these are very simple questions that we're finding some teams are asking, which is great, and it's feeding into this different kind of holistic perspective of how to define risk of public services.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dorothy. So I guess some of those foundational things then is that we need to kind of understand the systems that we're using, not necessarily that we need to kind of suddenly change, but is it being used in the right way before we go and procure a new system as well? Going back to some of those building blocks, I think that have been mentioned in other systems, understanding your users really important as well. And then a different way of managing risks and thinking about the risks that you have. So just some of the things that maybe you're thinking, well, I already do that, or maybe you're thinking, I'm not sure how to do that. So if you have any questions, be ready to ask those as we go forward. Thank you. Innocent, I'm going to come to you. So in Rwanda, how well equipped do you think your public servants are to face the challenges that they have ahead of them, and in particular on digital transformation?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. This is my second time, and every year it looks like it's growing. So just to build off where Dorothy just put it, initially there was a challenge of really understanding the solutions that are being used in the standard digitization process. But today, we are faced with a challenge of understanding the implications of AI. First of all, what does it mean? How do we take advantage of it? And over and above that, now we really need to understand data, because earlier along there were conversations about data, but we really need to go a little bit deeper into data. There is structured data, unstructured data, and the in-between, all sorts of different data sets. How do you really make sense of all these data sets and get insights that enable you to deliver a service to the citizens? So that is a very big challenge right now. How do you really make sure that, one, you understand the data that you have, and how can you derive, you know, insights to deliver service? And then when it comes to AI, we really need to have, you know, data is the bloodstream of AI and later on decision making. So if you don't have good data, I don't think you'll be able to take advantage of AI capabilities. You know, so all these now, on top of that, you really have to have the basic digital literacy competencies. Really, do I know or understand the mechanics of this system? And do I really understand how to relate it to the business issue that I'm addressing? So we really need to take a step back and really understand what are the business requirements, what are the user requirements. When you look at the user needs that were there 5 years ago, they're completely different from the user needs today. the users of today are more sophisticated. They are going to demand a lot more from what you're able to offer. So really being able to understand not only the user requirements, the business requirements and processes, but also now the data and structures and IT systems to really be able to address these needs. So bringing all these things together is really what is posing a challenge to public servants. We're not like the private sector, which has agility and ability to be able to move a little bit faster. So we really need to be able to move at that pace to be able to address the citizen needs. So, and of course, on top of this, government processes that somehow are quite slow and inhibit, people to be able to deliver. You have to conform to all these privacy requirements. You have to conform to all these challenges that we're faced with. So how do you really address all these issues together in one package that you're able to deliver to the services?
Brilliant, thank you so much. I mean, the list of things is growing, so I've added now to what we already had on risk management, on understanding users, on understanding your systems and when you need to change your systems. So I've added there, Innocent, what you were saying, data, having the right data, but also everybody needing to have a level of data literacy that maybe they didn't have before, in understanding how to use that data to get insights that's going to drive change, and also understanding the changing expectations of your users and how fast everything is moving. And I've also added tools. Do you understand the tech tools that are available that you can use? So, Tara, we already have quite a long list, and I'm sure the audience have questions about them, but you work with lots of agencies and departments across the public sector. Does this kind of resonate with you? And where do you think it's working well? Where do you think people are well equipped? And where do you think they need a bit more support?
Thank you, Siobhan. So as you mentioned, at SAS we get to work with organizations around the world. As part of a global public sector team, I get to see a lot of different examples. For those of you who don't know SAS, it's all things data and AI, so Innocent's definitely speaking my language. What are the jurisdictions that we see kind of really making advances, and in all of our public sector organizations we're faced with the challenges of needing to conform with legislation and regulations and policies and procurement practices. But the ones that have really, to pick up on the theme of the session around building blocks, the organizations and jurisdictions who have identified some foundational building blocks that should be provided to their public servants. I think too often we're asking individuals and teams to build everything from the foundation up, right? They have to deal with all aspects anytime they want to deliver a new program or new system or new policy. So organizations and jurisdictions that have created an investment and support strategy for some foundational building blocks. And when I talk about foundational building blocks, I'm not just talking technology, right? That's the regulation and policy, it's the communication channels, it's the decision-making frameworks that allow you to start not from the ground up, that you're starting from a solid foundation and then are able to really spend your time understanding your specific customer, citizen, user needs and delivering to that. If you think about it in the private sector, the fact that we can all go to our digital devices and find an app that does just about anything, it's not because that app developer started from zero. They're starting from a platform, a common system, and the session today has covered off lots of the features and functions of those, some of those core systems that need to be put in place. But I would ask everyone here to consider kind of more what those core systems should be delivering. If we can give our public servants a foundation that handles most of the tricky things around security, around transparency, around fairness, and then they can start building from there, I think that really will give us all the ability to scale and respond to the needs that are coming at us.
Fantastic, thank you. So making sure you have the technology foundations in place from which you can then go on and do the rest of the things that you need to do, so making sure you have that in place. And I think one thing that maybe we haven't touched on yet, which might come up as well, is skills, and the skills that people will need to either maybe use the technology, but also the skills to be that more collaborative kind of civil servant or public servant that we're talking about. Thanks so much, Tara. Cordell, what's it like over in the United States? So does all of this sound familiar to you, and do you think you're equipping your public servants as well as they should be?
Thank you, Siobhan. I think there's things that are alike and things that are different. We've chosen 3 priorities for ourselves at the U.S. Department of Transportation in our IT organization. And the first is cybersecurity. The second is workforce development, as you're suggesting. And the third is IT system modernization. So if we have insecure systems, we're going to be spending all of our time just chasing that, with little time to improve systems or address new needs that are arising. So we have to put cybersecurity first, and we've invested a lot of time and money and attention. And whether you're on the cybersecurity team or not, cyber is your first priority. And we created a new team within the last 2 years because we're the Department of Transportation, and we actually oversee rail and maritime and aviation and surface transportation, like cars and trucking. We have a sector cybersecurity organization because now we're becoming vulnerable in the operational technology in each of those sectors. And as that operational technology modernizes, it's going to be IP-based, just like all of our other information technology. So the lessons that we have to learn from on the IT side will be applicable on the sector side in all those different transportation modes. And then finally, like a lot of governments in the United States, in the state, at both the federal, state, and local levels, we've been underfunded for years, maybe generations. So we have a lot of legacy technology that not only fails to be accessible, fails to be customer friendly for the public, but it's also very difficult to secure. So we need to address that backlog that's been unaddressed for all these years of the IT infrastructure, bringing that into modern day so it is easier to secure. And then instead of just buying it once and forgetting about it for 20 years, but consistently investing in that technology to keeping it up to date. Otherwise, A, we won't be secure. 2, we're not going to be accessible, and you know, that's one of the themes that I've heard on multiple panels, the need to meet all of the public's needs to use our systems that often can't be done with a legacy technology or can't be done well. So we've addressed those 3 things. And I went over quickly on the workforce development side. We have to be upskilling or training our folks. They have to know that training's available. We'll make training budgets a priority, particularly as they're facing this anxiety over artificial technology.
Yeah.
So universally, our people and all of us will need to move up the food chain, so to speak. If AI is going to do some of the more routine or paper-based or processing tasks, then those of us who are involved in that need to receive the investment so that they can do more complex tasks, and then be sure that the artificial technology-based systems are not only fit for use and are secure in keeping private data private, confidential data private, but also fit for purpose, that they're actually serving customer needs.
Brilliant, thanks, Cordell. So really interesting to hear the way you've kind of done the overview there. So in those 3 pillars, as you said, the things that you need, good cybersecurity, focus on workforce development and what that might mean in the future, and then that real investment in the IT infrastructure and moving away from some of those legacy systems, and then you bringing in that issue of skills. And I'll be curious to hear from the audience as well, whether they think they have the skills that they need to use some of these new technologies, but also the skills that they need to work in the new way that people are working. So we're all working in some kind of hybrid fashion at the moment. So whether you are equipped to do that well, I think, for the future, I'd be interested in that as well. So I'm coming to you, the audience, in a moment, but Carl, finally from you. So in Estonia, similar question, kind of what are your challenges and how have you kind of helped your civil servants to meet those challenges?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And I think there are quite many important points already been said. But I would like to make a distinction between digital skills, what we need for our day-to-day operations, and also the skills we need to, in order to improve as a digital society and to succeed and provide better services and create more value for our end users and for the citizens and companies. So, considering our current situation, I would say we still tend to assume that all the government employees have sufficient level of basic digital skills already. Even though if we are looking at the statistics, we are speaking about the average Estonian civil servant being 40+ years, which means that considering the time when the personal computers and the internet connections was coming in, it's not something so essential as reading or doing mathematics and so on. So can we really assume that everybody who would like to work or already work in the government have the sufficient skills to do the day-to-day operations? And if I put the second part, which I was referring to, preparing to build a digital society, it also demands that we have the great, as it was said, fundament or the foundation to build on. So in order to understand what it means to create really user-centric services or use all those new technologies or even the generative AI in the sufficient way, it needs that we can perform our basic day-to-day tasks in the most efficient way, and I think that's the challenging part, to have this foundation in place.
Brilliant, thank you. So making no assumptions around the level of digital kind of understanding and digital literacy that you have across the workforce as well, and that wider impact on society. Thank you so much to all of you for setting the scene. I think we've brought in lots of building blocks, I think, that we think people need to have. I'm curious whether our audience feel like they do have those and whether they are well equipped. So I'm coming over to the audience now. Any questions at all on kind of the building blocks that you need and whether you feel that you have them? And I'm going to scan the whole of the room here. Yes, we have a question there at the back, thank you. And a gentleman for the next question right down here at the front as well next, thanks.
Hi. Speaking from the working floor, I think the biggest challenges employees have right now are the lack of training, the lack of opportunities for training, the lack of budget for training, the lack of time for training now that we have, for example, two more hours of commuting time added to the daily routine. And that is not only for the employee, for the analyst, but that's for IT too, because from some of the new technologies, even IT, like cloud, has difficulty to understand them. And what can happen, they can be captive to unscrupulous vendors, so they can sell IT something that's new and shiny, but doesn't always fulfill the needs of the workforce. So my question is like, how do we make space for training, for upskilling, for building a more competent workforce in the government?
Thank you. I really like that question because so many people say it's all about the training, but the reality is sometimes people aren't given the budget or they're not given the time, they're not given the opportunity to have the training. So Megan, I'll come back to you because we haven't heard from you for a while. How would you answer that question?
I think it's really having conversations with your leadership. So for example, for me, we try to tier in some of our training with, especially with PaaS and SaaS products that we have. There's like a fire hose of updates that come all the time, and trying to get ahead of those can be really difficult. And so we try to utilize some of the client support that we have with those vendors to say, listen, I want to have a training with my team, I want a workshop, but I'm going to bring you actual business cases, and I want you to solve them with me in real time with my team. So I'm trying to maximize the training as much as we have it, and also to the best of your ability, I try to make space for my team to be able to get the training that they require to say, listen, if we want to be really good at this and actually get to the outcomes we want in a project, then we have to make space for them to actually have the skill set they need to do that. Otherwise, we won't be successful. And if that means that our timelines change a little bit, then maybe that's what has to happen, other than in the long term and it kind of failing because we didn't have the right skill sets at the time. So it's kind of making those business cases, which having good leadership and good support is going to bring there. And as leaders, we should be doing that and having those conversations a lot more to try to support our folks, even in the small things. things, trying to get projects done. I was expecting my team to kind of come in and work in an agile approach with a PM in a space they've never had before. They'd never worked in a project management approach. They're operational folks that hadn't worked in that way before, and I said, you know what, let's stop, take a minute, and actually give them the skill set to be able to work in that environment, because we weren't going to be successful otherwise. So it's really kind of being, as a leader, making sure you make that space and also having those conversations, and sometimes they're difficult and sometimes you're not going to get it, but you have to try because it's extremely important to have it. I think we are doing a better job of being able to provide those. We have our Canada School for Public Service that provides some training as well. We have avenues to be able to pull those in and leverage them more effectively. I tell my team all the time, if you see a free event, sign up for it, register, tell everyone, because we need to really maximize what we can. So, and as a leader, I have to make space to make sure they have the time to attend those as well.
Yeah, and come to events like this. You know, this is absolutely what we want you to do. Dorothy, did you want to come in on the training point?
Yeah, I mean, just building off of what Megan said, like that executive leadership, you know, having their sponsorship of learning and taking that time out of the day-to-day to actually like step aside from the work and learn new concepts, learn new processes, methodologies is really important. Excuse me, getting choked up here. So one thing that we really do encourage teams to do is what we call experiential learning. So I mentioned that we're a nonprofit. We really focus on the capacity building of the public sector. And really we see that happen when people or teams are able to not just learn theory from like the classroom or an online webinar, but then be able to apply that to an actual project or an actual work that you are actually working on. And so trying to find that relatable subject or application for the theory that you're learning is really where learning starts to actually happen in that kind of experiential learning cycle. And so, ways that you could creatively think about how to, for your own teams, like find ways to do experiential learning could be, finding opportunities to, if there are like vendors out there that have specific products or specific methodologies or frameworks that they're trying to pitch, even counter-proposing to them that it's like, hey, if you're up for talking to our group, could we bring forward like our business cases, our own projects that we're working on to find ways to actually make that learning a bit more applicable, are totally avenues to try, right? Especially when we're saying like it feels a bit resource constrained, training, there's not a lot of space or budget for training these days. So it's a matter of just trying to find those creative ways to get that training in for your team.
Thanks, Dorothy. While I ask if anyone else would like to come in on this question, could you put your hand up, the gentleman here, so we get the microphone down here? Thanks. Anybody else, do you want to come in on the training question before we go to the next? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on Dorothy's comment around the experiential training. I want to put a big shout out that the Canadian public sector is one of the highest participants in the hackathon that we host each year. And so I would encourage you to check that out as well. I think that along with establishing peer learning networks, right? So it's not all about top down, it's not all about coursework. If your leadership, and one of the asks that I think should be relatively simple to say yes to, is, can we create a sign-up board that allows me to pick the 6 things I'm interested in and find the other people, within my department, within my, with maybe across departments, where we can start having conversations and learning together, right? I've seen that accelerate the learning. Having a learning buddy is something that, again, that doesn't cost any extra money, and those learning opportunities get shared much more easily.
So thinking broadly about what training opportunities there are, not necessarily just the traditional ways of doing it. Thank you. Next question we'll go to.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the panelists' time. My name is Adrian. I work for the Canadian Army, and I'm the Knowledge, Information, and Data Management Officer for the Army. My question is the following. How do you see us incentivizing the digital mindset? And what I mean by that is that, at least in our organization, what I've noticed is that in that famous 3 pillars of digital transformation, people, process, and technology, I feel like we have the technology, we hopefully understand the process, but now it's the people that need to be incentivized to use the tools that we've made accessible to them. I find the training is accessible, it's available. Our industry partners have made it available. But at this point, how do we incentivize the individual to make use of those tools on their own time? Because I feel that the speed of technological change has reached such a point that we can't develop training fast enough to keep up with software as a service. And now that we are working on the cloud, our systems are continuously in transformation. So people have to learn on their own. How do we incentivize that?
Thank you. A really good question there. If you didn't quite catch the question, so how do you incentivize a digital mindset? So if the tools are in place, the technology is in place, the processes are all there, how do you actually incentivize people to be thinking about digital first, I guess, to be thinking about using digital in their day-to-day work? Cordell, I might come to you on that one first.
Thanks, Siobhan. That's a great question. And I think there's two answers, one for the public and then one for the IT providers within the government. On the public side, I think people vote with their feet. If it's truly easier for them, if it's quicker for them, if they have confidence in it, they'll use the tools. I think when it's inconvenient, confusing, whether it's around cybersecurity and using two-factor authentication, which we'd love everyone to use, or if it's about filling out forms or doing banking on your phone, we're not going to get them to adopt it just by lecturing them. And I know internationally, Estonia has had some of the greatest success digitizing their economy, so perhaps you'll want to comment on this as well, Carl. Internally, though, and I was kind of interested in some of the findings that IBM reported this morning, that during COVID, when people were working remotely, we had very high productivity. And since the pandemic broke, it slid back. So my inclination, old school, is that people work better when they're physically together. But maybe the fact that they're not commuting, they're actually spending more time on task and getting more done. My assumption was they weren't going as deep, but if we have some objective measures showing that, in fact, balancing in-person work with remote work actually adds up to greater productivity, some of that incentive could be making these telework or shorter work weeks in the office more permanent. And we certainly have the capability now to work remotely with high productivity. And I think it needs to change a bunch of paradigms. And here's an example. Before, if we had a crisis, the immediate response to that crisis was to gather all of the leaders in a single hardened room. But now that they all have tools at home, it's actually more dangerous for them, and they won't be in touch in response to an immediate crisis if they're traveling. So maybe the best place for them to stay is in whatever remote location has already been equipped. And if you're thinking about it in a disaster scenario, then maybe you want to be sure that they'll have power or a resilient internet connection, but to have that virtual conference instead of everybody in one big room. And when I talk to some of the emergency response folks, speaking of people who get it, they get it, and some of the emergency response folks don't get it. They still want everybody in a remote location. So we need to sell it internally if we expect the public to believe it, and then we need to provide it, whether it's external or internal, in a way that's digital and superior, not digital and painful.
Yeah, thanks. And Carl, Cordell's right that you do so much digitally in Estonia. So how much do you have to do in terms of incentivizing not just the public, but also civil servants to think digital before anything else?
Yeah, I think it goes in line also with education and training in general. You can, in a way, force it to make it compulsory to go through. And I think, for example, the cybersecurity trainings inside the organization is efficient if you're like repetitively doing it over the time. But you can also see that it's more efficient if you're doing from internal motivation. So I really liked the response from the previous question about showing the use cases, how it actually can make my life easier, or how it can improve my working style, etc. So if we can raise this appetite to learn more, or to seek towards the solutions, for example, how the generative AI can actually improve my job, and also to give those resources to how it do it in a safe way. So I wouldn't put any information in there which might not be cyber securely reasonable step. But also I also like it from your question about considering how quickly and rapidly the technology is evolving, we cannot keep up with the skilling pace. So it means that we should focus on upskilling the people and providing them resources whenever they actually need those. So making it available through e-courses, making it through webinars and so on. So I don't have to pre-learn something, even though I'm not sure if I really can apply it before there would be a new version available, or there is some new opportunity which is more efficient. But whenever I have it, then I have it on demand available for me. And that's something we have also invested in past years to our civil servants, to have this digital academy platform available where you can go and get information quickly and also in a controlled way, so you wouldn't seek for any resources which might not go in line with the general government approach and so on.
Thanks. Innocent, I'm going to come to you, on this one.
So I think what you need to do is really to show the individual the value of what they're doing. For example, one of the organizations in Rwanda called Irembo, what they did was really to show that show their employees that by learning these new tools, these new processes, they're able to save a certain number of hours in terms of how long they were taking to deliver a service. And that inadvertently also was able to save the citizens a number of hours commuting back and forth to different government offices to be able to get these services. So really showing a value, and not only onto the service they're doing, but also to themselves. If you're able to count and show the measure and show the individual that last year, before you took this course, this is where you were. But after taking the course, you have improved a certain percentage. That inadvertently motivates that individual to really take on more courses and more training. And that is an intrinsic incentive for them, because they realize, oh, by doing this, then I am improving, therefore I'm doing my job better. And number two, you really have to have a framework through which you're going to measure or monitor the progress. In Rwanda, we have what we call a digital talent policy, which is sort of a triangle. At the apex are the really high-end IT experts, in the middle are other employees, and then at the bottom are the citizens. Really, by measuring across the yardstick, you're able to see you've moved from point A to point B, and you're able to improve the services. So there, the employee is already motivated to say, if I don't take this course, I'm losing out. Actually, you realize that they start demanding, so where was this course, because it helped me to learn one or two different things. So as you provide that, it really becomes an incentive for them to really take on other different courses.
Thanks, Innocent. I'm going to come back out to the audience. So next question, who would like to answer? Yes, we've got a hand down there and a hand here. So these will probably be the last two questions. So lady there, and then if we can get a mic down here, if you could put your hand up again so you can just see where you are. Thank you.
Hello? Okay, sorry. So my question is about learning, and the more I hear about, the advantages of the AI is it's going to take the bottom level of our learning out type things. So we get to, use more of our higher level decision making, one of the basic principles of things. And it's really connecting to me, as some of you in the room may be parents, and I have a 15-year-old who knows everything, and I'm going to, the knocking of heads between me and her in learning is quite the challenge. And as I'm listening today, it is the same challenge that I'm having with her. And it's she is 15, information comes to them immediately. They don't retain it. They don't build a foundation. So I've been trying to get through her head that, you know, you learn something from the teacher, you practice it, whether it's math or you answer the question, and then it's after that that you develop your opinions and your insights and your deeper thinking, because she's in grade 10 right now. So I'm like, your value as a person moving forward is developing that thinking out of that practice and that things that you've learned. So I kind of am echoing in the same of, you know, how do we, when even we approach this for the incentivizing of the employees, right? So a lot of us kind of can go back to the model of which I had learned, you know, you build an essay a certain way or you learn a certain way. So how do we use that kind of a format of the adult learning so that they retain, or we still retain that foundation? So the AI may be doing it, but we still have that foundation. So we have a bit of the practice, because we're just going to be at the insights and the opinions without fully having the integration of it. We may lose actually the depth of some of our current decision making.
Okay, so let me unpick that a little bit. So I think the question is, how do you, and maybe there's a generational issue here, and I'm not sure I fully buy into the full thinking behind the question, but we can talk about that later. But how do you make sure with maybe people that have been in the civil service for a long time, they've got a depth of understanding of decision making, how do you make sure that when they're learning some of these new skills, they're learning it in a way that it really sticks with them, but that we don't lose all of the good stuff that we're already doing as well? Megan, you're keen to come in. And can I get the mic down here if you put your hand up for the next question, because we're running out of time. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I'll do this quick, and maybe how they're understanding it. I'm not sure if it's working. But this idea of like relying on AI to make decisions without thinking about the contextual background of why we've always made those decisions or what went into them, kind of the critical thinking piece. But I do think it's a good plug also of like, please hire students. I started as a student in the public service. I think it's how we get good talent. I think they have amazing things to bring to the table and a great set, fresh pair of eyes. So also thank you for bringing that up, because they are brilliant and grew up with this stuff. But I think by the same token, we also have a lot to bring into about how contextually how we got to AI. But I think the base level of it is the same question we all have when you're looking at bringing in AI solutions, and whether it's machine learning or however you're going to do it. But why? What are we trying to solve? And is it the right solution? Because maybe it's not. But it's really bringing it back to the base of even just if we start with the problem rather than trying to apply AI and work backwards of where we think it might fit. Let's start where the problems are and then try to apply it where it makes sense. Then use the right AI solution to make that fit. I think that's kind of where that's coming into, is we can't make those decisions of how to apply it well if we're not still doing that initial analysis and using all the skill sets and the different SMEs that we have on hand to make those decisions. And I think there's a bridge there, but I think that comes through conversation and being able to be open with colleagues and have opportunities for the training so everyone's sort of on the same playing field of being able to have those constructive conversations. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on this particular question? Yeah, Innocent.
What I can say is that, and I like the idea of bringing in students. Really, yes, you have AI that is coming, it's going to help you make decisions, but I don't think you're going to lose the all good stuff that you've learned over time. Actually, what it is going to help you to do, it is augment you and be able to realize and get insights much faster and quicker and respond to some of the questions or issues that you're dealing with in a much more faster way. I don't think really it's an either-or kind of situation. It's rather what you have plus much more that AI is bringing on board and enabling you and actually giving much more tools and a variety of different ways on how to be able to deal with the situation. So in my view, and I think really, this is what I want to say about AI. AI is a tool just like any other tool. What we really need to do is just really get to understand it and be able to utilize it to our best of our capabilities and actually take advantage of it and be able to utilize it. Because I don't think it is going to replace the experience, the knowledge and expertise that we have. Rather what it can do, it is augmented.
Thank you. And we've got one question, so I'm going to ask that very quickly. We'll have to answer this because we're almost out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, thank you. So there was a comment about how AI is going to let us, it's going to take care of mundane or repetitive tasks and then leave more space for critical thinking and complex issues. But I find that some people may feel threatened by this, I'm going to have to do more critical thinking, more decision making, and that's not what I necessarily signed up for.
That's a good question. Some people might like doing the routine tasks. That might be why they're enjoying their job. So yeah, Tara, and then anyone else can come back on anything in like 20 seconds.
20 seconds. I just want to relay an experience I had just a few weeks ago. I was hearing from a senior leader within the Federal Public Service of Belgium, and a light bulb went on for me when his job title came up, because his job title was Director General of Digital Transformation and Simplification. I'm like, whoa, I totally get that, right? And so two quick things. One, it totally puts the human at the center. And simplification isn't just for our clients, it's for our public servants, right? So, and I think intrinsically, you humans understand the value of simplicity. Computers and machines don't care about simplicity. They can handle complex actually better. The other thing that it made me, because I'm a data person, that it made me think of is that for all of these other things, goals of digital transformation, right? So reduce efficiency, reduce costs, all of these things that have traditionally been the drivers, we've got lots of ways to measure that. But we don't have a way to measure simplicity. And so I would like to, if any of you have simplicity as part of your mission and mandate, please come see me, because I'd like to learn from you. I really feel like that would be a good building block for us to work on, is a way to quantify that intrinsic human value that we're all trying to reach.
Thanks. So we are at the end, but would anybody else like to give just a reflection on that question about what about people who are scared of what's coming and who are worried about what AI is going to do to the way they work? Any final thoughts on that anyone would like to say? Yeah, Innocent?
I'll go first, and I will repeat what I just said, because AI is just a tool. It is a tool that is much more complex and a little bit advanced than other tools that we've seen before. When internet started, people are like, oh, we're going to lose our jobs. But here we are, we still have our jobs, and actually we're using internet to do much more. I believe AI is actually doing exactly the same. But what we rather need to do is really understand, how does AI work? Where can we apply it? Number two, there are jobs that used to be there a long time ago that are no longer here. That is exactly what AI is going to do. What we need to understand is just how do we learn to unlearn and learn again. Unlearn some of the old skills that we had that are no longer relevant. Because there are gig jobs today. And those gig jobs, you find a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, making billions of dollars, right? Back in the days, no one could expect that to happen. So that is actually what AI is going to do. There are skills that are going to be obsolete, but there are new skills that are going to emerge and come. So we need to embrace AI, learn how to use it, and use it to our advantage.
Brilliant. Anyone else want to come and put? Yeah,
20 seconds. If you're feeling uncomfortable, talk to your leadership about that, because if you're feeling uncomfortable and don't know, if you don't feel like you have the right fit, or you don't know where you're going to fit in, then challenge your leadership to also provide, maybe it is that training that you need, or maybe it's just a conversation of them being able to say, actually, no, there is a role to play, this is how we're going to utilize it, or maybe work with me to be able to, let's find out a strategy together of how we're going to get there. If you're feeling that fear, you're probably not the only one, and that's what teams are meant to be there, to have those conversations, to be able to work together to allay those fears, and maybe actually talk about what does it look like within our team, so that it's not just the fear of the unknown, you have an actual, this is a step-by-step approach of what we're looking to do, and this is how you fit into it.
Megan, thank you so much. We are at the end of our time, I'm afraid. So please join me in giving a big round of applause to our panel.